Hey, Gab.
Hey, Blab.
Let's close out The Expanse, you know?
Yes, let's do it. We
We
want a
were
new one.
doing 6 chapters at a time, but now let's go ahead and just do, I don't know, 32? Welcome back to Sci-Fi and Fantasy Readalong. As you've just heard, we've decided to make a few changes to this series. Before we get any further, if you are a fan of Leviathan Wakes or James S.A, you may want to stop listening now. What follows is a lengthy condemnation of the novel's merits, and those of the writers as well. It should be noted that it was not our intent to lambaste this novel or the authors, but it also shouldn't be much of a surprise to anyone. Not all works can withstand the critical eye of Sauron, and though I won't apologize for my opinions, I will endeavor to better select novels for this podcast in the future, as I hate to waste my time and yours on what amounts really to a negative review. One last note. The bouncing back and forth between characters, between chapters, will get confusing. So what we're going to do is all the Holden chapters in a row, followed by all of the Miller chapters in a row up until the point where they meet. And then the back and forth takes place and there is no change of scene. It just makes better sense when talking about the story itself. I think you'll see what we mean when it's happening. With that out of the way, where did we leave off?
We left off with Shed dying. Shed, the medic, in case anyone doesn't remember or doesn't care about Shed. He was a blip on the radar. And we start
Yeah.
off with them still locked up on the Martian ship.
Yeah.
And Shed's just been killed by debris through the head.
It wasn't debris, it was a
Wasn't it?
tungsten coated steel ball from the close defenses of the ships that are shooting at
Okay,
them.
well, I just imagine also there's probably a lot of debris flying around. It's
Well, there is
amazing.
now, namely Shed's head. Shed died because they're in that room and some bullets went through it. Whatever, big deal.
I don't have anything of note really in this chapter, except I thought one thing was kind of interesting. They're going through, I think there's some medical supplies, like maybe a cabinet or something. They're trying to find ancient Red Cross shield on some of the equipment, which why do they have really old ancient medical supplies?
No. The symbol is ancient, ding dong.
Okay. You
The
know what?
equipment.
Don't put that in the podcast.
I'm
Don't call
putting it
me a
in the
ding dong.
podcast, Blab.
Don't call me a ding dong
Why not?
because I don't like it.
You're being a ding dong.
I don't care.
Your interpretation is very funny.
Maybe it's because I'm trying to find anything, like any sort of meaning.
Oh, it's funny to me, Jill. Yeah, it's an ancient symbol, not an ancient pack of medical equipment. I know that the purpose of this
But if the
chapter,
symbol's still being used, why do they call it? Why does he refer to it as an ancient symbol?
because it was created like around World War One, and it's like 300 years into our future. Nevertheless, the point of this chapter is to show that they have the wherewithal to like seal the holes and like, yeah, we're gonna do that, and they were being proactive, right, with their situation.
You know, maybe it's more about the writing and how it just seems unnecessary to put that there for absolutely no reason as some sort of descriptor that means nothing.
It's funny. It's true. It's funny that you like we're gonna have so much ammunition, so much ammunition. Let's
It
tear
was
this
just
book
one little
apart.
thing, like why? Anyway, I already said what I said about it. I'll leave it there. There's not much more to say about this chapter.
But you said
They're
there's not
gonna
much
try
more
to
to say.
they're gonna try to escape the Donager, and the Martians are outside, and like they have suits for them, and they're gonna escape. Like they're gonna get them off the ship. They want to get them off the ship.
Right.
The Martians want to get them off the ship.
So to me, that the purpose of that. Okay, so
That's what's happening.
I'm gonna kind of pause the whole thing and tell you what I think is a fairly accurate assessment of how they wrote this novel. Not just the distribution of labor, but it feels to me like they made a checklist of all of the things that were in the plot and all of the things that needed to happen between plot devices in order to tell the reader what they wanted us to feel or believe. And none of it feels very organic or natural. And I think this chapter, the purpose of this chapter, is to show us that the Martians aren't really bad guys. Lieutenant Kelly comes back with some Marines, Martian Marines, and is like, hey, let's get you guys off this ship. We have a gunfight to go through to get you there, but we're going to do it anyway. And then they proceed to all of them get killed, essentially, in the process of getting off the ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they self-sacrificed and they didn't torture them and like went against all expectations to get them off the ship. And to me, that's only designed to tell us that Martians aren't the bad guy.
Oh, and you know what's okay? On my very next page here, the moments that are supposed to make us care about the characters in the world or other people in the world besides Holden and Miller don't really work for me all the time. They don't make me care.
Give me an example.
Well, we just had that chapter. It was like, I don't really care about the Martians necessarily. Like,
Well, why should you?
but that's my point. Why should I?
Lieutenant Kelly,
Mm-hmm.
he and his Marines, they sacrificed everything to get Holden and his crew on a ship to escape. Why would they do that?
Right. Why would they do that? Well, they have this box. They know that he has this whatever box of
Yeah, but if
info.
they just wanted to get that box to their friends, they could have launched their own people. Why bother saving Holden? Who cares if Holden lives or dies?
I think Yao was smarter than, or a smart commander, and probably knew the value of Holden being alive with the information.
Well, I mean,
Perhaps.
later on, we're told that like Fred values him for being alive because they're the only eyewitnesses to blah blah blah.
Yeah, he wants
But
them. Yeah.
who cares? Their ship has, a black box recording of the event, visually and otherwise.
Well, I'm specifically just thinking of Yao and what she may have been thinking, and maybe that's what she was thinking.
She can't possibly value Holden over her own Marines and Lieutenant Kelly.
I think it goes back to what you said previously, where was like on the checklist. I mean, they have to survive and they have to get off the ship, and this is how they got it done.
Okay, so like this leads me to a problem that I have, a deep problem with the entirety of the book, that is Holden and his people, they're completely reactionary. I'll be able to explain that more clearly later, but like they're not doing anything on their own. They're always being helped.
There might be some different things going on if Holden wasn't in charge. I think he's leading that.
Well, he shouldn't be in charge, for one thing. Naomi's a better candidate, clearly. But so Lieutenant Kelly gets them to that ship. There's a gunfight and everybody dies except for Lieutenant Kelly and obviously Holden and his crew. And they get on this ship and they blast out of there. And Amos turns the guns on everybody, blah, 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 kills all the people that fought him there. And
the ship's called the Tachi. They're going to rename it to Rocinante. I've never read Don Quixote.
Yeah.
I only know the music from Man of La Mancha. Does that hold any meaning to you, or do you think that's kind of like frivolous added stuff?
It's frivolous. It's unnecessary. It's kind of like when we're reading the Julie transcripts later on in the Miller section.
Yeah.
And she says, "Fear is the mind killer. Haha, geek." You're like, okay, well, it's an obvious nod to Dune, which is completely unnecessary. Nobody's going to be watching 400-year-old movies or reading 400-year-old book. Like, Dune's not going to last 400 years.
There are a few things that have lasted, but probably not Dune.
It's not Shakespeare.
Yeah, but this is more in reference to Holden tilting at windmills and blah, blah, blah.
He is a fool. Don Quixote, like the act of tilting windmills, is a fool's errand by definition. And that's exactly what Holden does. Fred even calls him on it at some point and says tilting at windmills. And
that's the stuff that kind of makes me cringe when I read it in the book, because they point out some of it so explicitly when it's
as though we, the reader, didn't get it. Yeah. So yeah, they call Daddy for help. They're like, "Daddy, please help us." That's Fred we're talking about again. And he sends them transponder code to like change their thing so they can turn it on and off or whatever. I don't know. It's ridiculous. Because everybody's there to help them. They're never able to solve any of their own problems on their own. They always have to be helped.
That's true.
So they get help from Daddy and then they fly away.
Moving on, they're flying to Tycho.
They're having their downtime between leaving the ship and getting to Tycho Station, their destination, and they're having dinner, and they have a checklist about like how badass that ship is that they're on.
Yeah,
The
basically, if you
newly
need a gigantic, hard to or impossible to do engineering job, you ask Tycho, and they
what?
get it
No,
done.
no, 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 no. Their ship.
What?
Their
Oh,
ship.
their ship.
They haven't even decided to go to Tycho yet. They vote on it over dinner, right?
Okay.
They're having their downtime and they're like, what should we do? And they're having dinner and they're going through the checklist of like all of the missiles and the guns and the armor and all of the ways that this
And the
ship.
bathroom is awesome.
Well, they lost Shed, right? But who
Yeah.
needs Shed when you've got an automated smart medic? It's like Star Trek. What
Yeah.
was it, Voyager, where they had the hologram doctor?
Ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was. Anyway, they got a doctor that's better than a real doctor.
Again, Shed, totally insignificant. Like, why was he even? They just that off their checklist. They needed somebody in the crew to die, and it's like they didn't have enough balls to make it a significant event.
Yeah, he died pretty unspectacularly.
And
it would have looked cool on TV.
It did. It's a cool little scene because Shed's talking, and then all of a sudden, like,
Yeah.
Well,
they vote to go to Tycho Station, where Fred was able to help them out, and they're like, well, maybe he can help us more because we're helpless. And there's something in there about Naomi saying, I could never be in charge. I'm just not good at that kind of stuff. But she's clearly better than Holden is at all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And in earlier chapters, you get the feeling that she wouldn't say that sort of stuff, but she does say that sort of stuff. They write
It's very
her
out
to
of
say
character.
that.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's very out of character for her to be dismissive of her own talents. She's pretty cocksure.
Yeah. The way they describe her earlier, it doesn't seem like this is where her personality would be going in this situation.
Maybe she just wants Holden to feel good about himself.
But why?
Because she's in love, of course.
Well, we'll get to another thing. It's in that
Hold
Miller
on.
chapter
I got to clean the vomit off my chin.
Yeah. But that's the same chapter where they changed the name of the ship to Rocinante. And
that's this chapter.
Yeah, there's some Don Quixote.
Yeah. They arrived at the Tycho Station, which is a mobile construction platform that's building that big ship that the Mormons consigned. It's not called consigned. What's it called?
They just hired them to do it.
Yeah.
Contracted.
Yeah, I know that, Jill. There's another word for it when you hire somebody to do work for you. Commission. The Mormons commissioned this generation ship called the Nauvoo.
Did you think I wasn't trying to find the word? I gave you two other options.
You didn't give me the right word.
I'm sorry.
Did you notice?
Trying to help.
Yeah. Except that, like Philip in the last recording that we did, filling my head with the wrong word doesn't help me find the right one.
Well, fine. Don't ask then.
I didn't.
You did.
No, Jill, I didn't.
Hmm.
It was a rhetorical question.
Oh, well, so you did ask then out loud.
Yeah, I was talking to myself.
Am I supposed to know that? We're talking to each other right now.
That is what I'm used to. I'm not used to having Jill sitting there trying to answer my dumb questions.
But my head's right here.
Yeah, well, sorry. All right, so let's see. Oh, yeah. They got off their ship. They're like packing heat, right? When they get there, they dock with Tycho Station and they all strap on guns like all over themselves. But Naomi doesn't want to
assume disaster to occur.
Well, I would too after being in a firefight and escaping with my life.
Yeah.
But Naomi doesn't want a gun. She turns it down. He orders them to put guns on their person or hide them on their body. And she's like, nah. Okay. So a lot of good his orders are.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't really mean anything. Like,
I can't believe they take this guy seriously. Like, they call him captain. Like, they elected him to be their captain after that nonsense. I'll be like, dude, no. As soon as I get to his station, I'm leaving.
But it's really because none of them wanted the job, and he was the one that has the highest rank. So it's kind of like, well, put it on this guy. We don't want to do it.
If you were an ice hauler, which as a reminder, that was the lowest rung on the ladder for blue collar work in the belt.
Yeah, you go there to hide or to just
Do you
do your thing.
take up arms against the military with your new ship, or do you go and you get another job elsewhere?
Yeah, drop me off on whatever
Tycho Station's a
station.
nice place to get a job, I think.
Well, once they get there and they talk to Fred and everything, he wants them to be witnesses and just he wants there to be some sort of trial to occur. So basically, he wants them to wait there on Tycho for years until the war hasn't started yet, but until essentially the war ends, and then some tribunal occurs, and then they're going to be witnesses. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
No, it's
For him
completely
to
nuts.
assume that.
It's completely nuts. Like, who cares about even now? People are already starting to talk about how useless eyewitness testimony is in our judicial system.
And Holden's already been put up on a pedestal over here, slammed over here. Like, he's not a reliable witness anyway, even though he was a witness.
You're right. You're correct. You're completely correct.
This side will believe him. This side won't. Or if they do believe him, and because they know the real facts, they'll just use that against him anyway. So it's stupid. It's stupid on Fred Johnson's part. But on the other side of that, like you were saying, Tycho is very nice. There's bars, there's casinos, there's
whorehouses,
prostitutes. Yeah, there's just a lot of fun for Amos. Yeah. Probably some fun for Alex.
Maybe. Alex is a non-character in my opinion.
Very much a non-character.
Amos is the most character person among this group.
And the most character we get from Amos is through Miller's perspective in some later chapters.
No, he actually does some stuff and says things.
Yes, he does. He does stuff and says things, but Miller makes observations about Amos that are more interesting than what we get in.
All right, well, maybe we'll get there. I don't know. But okay, so this chapter, funnily enough, they get this badass brand new ship, right? And what's the first thing they do? They go and they dock it somewhere.
Right. Well, but where you have to dock it somewhere, how are they going to get off the ship?
I'm just saying, you remember that checklist they went through about how badass this ship was?
Yeah.
And then they go and they dock it.
But again, I ask, what's their other option? If they're going to Tycho Station, how do they
get into a space battle? Do you remember when they were locked up in the Martian ship? And I was complaining because
everything's going on outside.
All the exciting stuff was happening elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's the same problem. It's the same exact problem. Like, what's the point of telling me this checklist of how badass that ship is when they're not going to use it?
I guess to make us more aware of how valuable this ship is and how
it was a boring chapter.
Hot it is. I don't know.
Boring.
I didn't make note though of that. That chapter also includes they go to a karaoke bar and it's just like Holden
watching Naomi,
obsessing over Naomi, but like thinking like how weird it is that she's doing karaoke, and this is just
because he knows her so well.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's so cringy. It's like the way he thinks about things is so narcissistic.
I have notes several places where I'm like, is this guy a narcissist?
Yeah. Oh, I think he's 100% a narcissist. He hero worships himself.
Yes.
And I've made note of that in some spots.
All right, good.
Specifically of where he's like the way he's thinking about things is like, what?
I am glad we're on the same page.
Your perspective is askew.
Yes, he's a crazy person.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm afraid
how many moms does he have? 5?
3 moms, 5 dads.
Three moms. They must have coddled him or something. I don't know, but
well, I mean, he had 8 parents paying attention to him, so he obviously thinks he's special.
As an only child, what's not? Yeah, that's Whew.
Yeah, no,
I guess that kind of follows, but it doesn't make me like him.
No, there's nothing. There's nothing that he ever says or does that makes me like this guy.
So just the whole romance angle in general feels forced. And back to your whole checklist, we need a romantic interest, and that's how they're getting it done.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too political or anything, or even assume that certain people think a certain way when I have no clue. But it feels like also checklist. We have to have like some like a prominent female character, even though she's not prominent and isn't. Naomi could be written so much better. especially
Well,
later on.
yeah.
Like she so feels like she's being written by a man, and the way she talks about Holden, I'm like, why? She wouldn't be thinking this way. This is insanity.
So if this was just a story like in the classic sci-fi sense where, old school sci-fi, 1950s and 60s sci-fi, this is how she would be written essentially as a prop for a main character.
She feels like an old Doctor Who companion.
She's providing counterpoint and someone to talk to so that the doctor is not a crazy person when he's talking to himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And depending on the doctor, a potential love interest.
Ooh, sexy time.
But yeah, they're there to motivate the doctor. Naomi's there to motivate Holden.
She's there to put him in line, I think. Largely. He's an idealist.
Yeah, but a lot of the times, or most of the times, it's him being able to convince her with his passion to go along with his idea. Don't
His
you think?
ideas are insanity.
Yeah, but they go along with his ideas, is what I'm saying. And everyone
Yeah.
else will go along with it when Naomi goes along with it. Let's go. Maybe we should rewind now.
Rewind.
Or not rewind, but
You mean move on?
I was
Fast
just
forward.
what
Skip
is
ahead a few chapters. They get bored on Tycho and they decide they want to earn money, and they if they're going to be there for years, they might as well be couriers or something. So they volunteer.
Right.
They're in the process of volunteering that service when Fred's like, I need a ship to go and do blah, blah, blah. And they're like, hey, conveniently, that's us. So they kind of, they jump into some MacGyver action and they make alterations to the ship so it doesn't have the same profile that it used to do. So it'll fool ship computers. They negotiate to become couriers, and he tells them that Lionel Polanski checked into a flop house on Eros Station, and he doesn't really exist, but we know him because he owns all this stuff.
Right. Oh, by the way, he owns the scopuli.
Yeah. So basically, he's a fake person that the OPA uses to own stuff that the OPA can't own.
This is where I made note of more Naomi hero worshiping.
Oh, you want to know what I wrote down?
Chapter 21. Yeah.
Heartfelt Naomi speak.
Yeah.
Barf.
Yeah. I just wrote down hero worship. I left it at that. Yeah.
Barf.
I don't even remember what she said because I don't want to remember it.
It doesn't matter. It's completely out of character, completely untrue. It just feels wrong.
Feels wrong, exactly. It doesn't feel right.
No, it made me want to retch. So I wrote barf.
Yeah.
It probably wrote lame in the book. I don't know, maybe. All right, so that was chapter 21 that we've gotten up to, but we're now going to go back to chapter 14, I think it is, and push up to chapter 20.
That sounds good. Ooh,
All right,
we
let's
left
do
on
that.
a real super cringy moment that I was about to go into.
No, we don't need Jill going crazy.
Ooh.
Excuse me, Blab.
Chapter 14. Havelock's gone.
Yeah, tensions on Ceres Station are rising.
Yes, war escalation in the belt.
There's a lot of crime happening. There's a lot of noise coming from the outrage machinery from the OPA. So Miller got a new partner because Havelock left. Muss, I think.
Muss.
I think so.
She's
a lady.
Yeah, but he got kind of write her as not a hard woman or anything like that, but
she
no
is
nonsense.
A little bit jaded. I think she's seen a lot of really horrible. She came from the Rape Squad, and before that, I think she was doing Vice or something. I don't remember. She's seen a lot of really bad
crimes against children and some pretty messed up stuff.
Yeah, she's seen bad things that humans have done to other humans, and so she has a real dry sense of humor. But she does have one, and I think she makes a pretty good partner, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, in the classic cliche noir form, Miller's told off the case by Shadid.
Yes, of course.
You're still investigating. I told you to stop. Stop.
But will he stop? No.
Almost certainly not. Almost. Well, if he did, it would just be okay, book over.
Yeah, we cannot stop. So he goes and talks to Dawes.
Yeah.
Gets a thumb drive of information.
Yeah, he does.
And they strike a deal.
Well, he said he told Dawes also told him to stop.
Yes, well, that's part of the deal. Like, I'll give you this if you stop.
Well, yeah, and what did
Right?
Dawes give him? He gave him
It was about the equipment, the
the
lost
riot
equipment?
gear, yeah.
The riot gear, yeah.
Like the local Griga smuggled it off.
Right.
Loca Griga. I keep calling them the local Griga, but I don't know what Griga
It's
means.
a gang name. It's not the overall name of, like, the local thugs.
Yeah.
Even though that's how it sounds.
No, it's Loca, as in
Yeah.
crazy something or other.
Do they also talk about how that's when a bunch of those people disappeared as well? Does that come up in this chapter?
Yeah, it does. We heard that in a
Yeah.
previous chapter. I don't remember which one, doesn't matter. And then we heard it again here where they talk about the amount of weight that was shifted between
Right.
ships.
Right.
So Miller's got a pretty good idea that a lot of personnel
Right.
and equipment moved at the same time.
Right. The pieces aren't totally put into place yet for him, but we get more info on that.
Yeah.
Even though he says he's not gonna investigate more, Miller at the end of this chapter contacts Mao via email or something.
He does, because this is where he puts it together. He sees the connection between Julie Mao and the Canterbury.
Yeah.
He figures that out somehow. I don't remember how. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, just through the information he's looking through.
He's a good detective.
Together.
He's a good
Yeah.
detective.
Yeah.
And I don't hate him.
No, I don't hate Miller.
I mean, he's a drunk. He's kind of irresponsible.
He's kind of pathetic.
He's a good thinker. And he doesn't say things that make me cringe.
I have a question for you about Miller, but when we get there, I will ask you.
Well, let's skip ahead 2 chapters and get to the next Miller chapter.
This is when he goes to Shadid's office.
Yeah, because he tried to get a hold of
Mao,
his dad. Right?
Yeah,
and they've been monitoring him.
Yeah, and
she's like, in my office now.
Mm-hmm.
And when he gets in there, Dawes is in her office.
They lay it down to him. Stop. There's more going on than you know. Basically, just more stop. Right?
Well, it's kind of a lot of reveal right here. The fact that Dawes is in the office, Shadid is giving him kind of the rundown, but she knows OPA business. And Dawes, I think, is the one that explains that Earth needs to remain neutral.
Yeah, and Dawes is the one that hands out the information to Miller. Shadid is pretty tight-lipped.
She is, but I mean, it's pretty. She was suspected by Miller as being a sympathizer of OPA, but this is almost proof that she works for them directly.
Right, and obviously Dawes is in the power position.
Yeah, he's higher up than she is. But Earth needs to remain neutral in order that Mars and the OPA can have a negotiator, a neutral third party between the junk that's going on that Holden caused when he broadcast his first message.
Right.
Starting a war. Miller is working for a corporation called Star Helix. They're an Earth corporation. And that I got it wrong just a moment ago. The OPA wants to find Julie because they don't want Earth in any capacity to be involved with the investigation because of a conflict of interest. Right? So the OPA wants to find Julie and do all that stuff so later on Earth can negotiate and be impartial.
Right.
And Star Helix, being from Earth, cannot be part of the investigation. So why were they given the investigation in the first place? Shut up.
Yeah.
The OPA also reveals that they have Holden, or they're about to.
Right.
And then he's like, how the hell did you get him off that ship? That's what's going through his mind.
And Shadid is like, whoa.
But
I can't believe that she told her that.
Yeah. So at the end of this chapter, Miller's kind of getting the idea that he might be a has-been.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is this chapter. Must lays it down for him. She's the one with the joke partner because she wouldn't sleep with one of her superiors.
Yep.
And it finally starts to click in Miller's head, like, oh wow, wait, I'm a joke here.
Yeah, I'm the one nobody wants to work with.
He didn't get it, and because he didn't get it, we didn't get it.
Right.
I don't think our first hint, I think, is Dawes saying, like, we didn't want someone like you to find.
I think the first hint was him being saddled with the Earther.
Yeah,
Havelock.
I guess so. Yeah, you're right.
They threw Havelock with this guy. It could have gone either way, but now we have confirmation that it's actually him being a joke.
Yeah, and I guess liking Miller kind of skews my opinion a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, mine
Or
too.
not
Mine too,
hating him,
for
I don't
sure.
know.
But I mean, to me, that's like the author did a good job. I didn't see it coming.
No, I didn't.
But we do have my only written note here that says gag about him being in love with Julie.
Yeah.
That was lame. I think he does a pretty good job of explaining why later, but it comes later and like this was just blah. Gross.
He's kind of an interesting character being, not an Earther and not being a Martian, but he's born on the belt, but he's not really interested in space. Like his feet are really firmly planted on the ground and he never looks up at the stars and he's really ground based. What do you think about that?
I think it's ironic since he's out there, but at the same time, they apparently don't have a lot of windows.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting, but it doesn't really mean anything.
I like Miller. Well, let's jump another 2 chapters. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he spends one night feeling sorry for himself, gets really, really drunk, and then he kind of pulls himself together.
Yeah.
Goes back to work.
I have something. Oh, it's Earth is pulling out.
Yep.
Ceres is on its own.
Yep. This is when
and he's fired.
Yep. He gets fired because Star Helix, the Earth Corporation, basically backs out of their contract. Everybody that's working there, they get handed over to Ceres Station Government, which is about to be implemented. And yeah, Earth leaves the sphere of influence of Ceres.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yes, first thing they do is fire Miller because Shadid says she can't trust him with her life.
Yeah. Anything else interesting there? I don't have anything.
Not really, but it's a great excuse to give Miller ample time to go through all of the requests that he had just made.
Yeah.
So he'd made all these requests for those ships that Blab was talking about, with Epstein drives that might have been able to get to such and such. I don't remember. It was complicated and it made sense.
There was a line of logic that he's following to find it.
Yeah, he's being a detective. He asked for all these requests for, possible ships that might have gotten from point A to point B in a certain amount of time, and it makes sense. And so he starts to get all this data in before he gets fired. And now he's got all the free time in the world.
Yeah.
3 months worth of pay or something, and a lot of free time. So he starts going through the data. And conveniently, he finds the Rocinante like fast, super fast. So he buys a ticket to go meet up with them somewhere, wherever it was that they were going. And then while he's in line, he gets a notification that they've changed course. He just moved. He was on his way to Tycho. That's what it was. And then he finds out that they filed a flight report or whatever to go to Eros Station. So he loses a bunch of money, but he buys a ticket to Eros instead. And this is where we're going to have them meet up.
So he got a message from Havelock and
who's working for Protogen now, is that right?
Yeah. So he gets some information there, and if Miller wants a job, contact him.
All right, so 2 chapters later, Miller's in transit. His life is basically over. He knows it. He's kind of feeling dejected and suicidal, I would say.
Yeah.
And he finally arrived. Oh, he has a conversation with some Bible thumper.
Was it one of the Mormons?
No, I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know.
It's some sort of pastor or minister.
Yeah, and they just have a conversation, and it's pretty nice. Just serves to show that Miller's like dejected and whatever.
Yeah, it's to give us a different flavor, I think, instead of just being inside Miller's head, because this is how they've written the books.
All told, Daniel Abraham is a better character writer by a long measure. Because I'm not bothered by these characters, even though, I know if it had been handled by the other guy, I would not have enjoyed this scene.
Right? I would say all of the extra characters in the Miller chapter have way more character.
They do.
Than any of the other
absolutely they do.
In the Holden chapter.
Absolutely they do. And in fact, the only time that I liked... No, we'll get there. It's coming up real soon. Okay, so Miller has that conversation, and then he arrives on Eros, and he somehow managed to get there ahead of Holden and crew.
Right, so he waits. I guess it's probably just the way it's situated.
Well, he doesn't really just wait. He runs into a guy he knows, Sematimba,
Oh, right. The other cop.
who's a cop on Eero Station, and that he gives him a lot of information about how the old security forces Protogen, they trained up their replacements and then they took off,
Right.
and a whole bunch of new equipment's been brought in, and
And like thugs that are
the new
definitely
guy,
not police trained.
yeah, the new guys seem like corrupt thugs to him.
Yeah.
And then Miller sets up in the casino level because all of the offloading traffic through Eero Station goes through the casino before it goes elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
And he also talks with the, what's his name? The guy?
Sematimba?
Simitimba, just kind of hey, lets him kind of know that he's there doing something, and hey, give me a little breathing room.
Yeah. Well, don't embarrass me, please, on my station. Sematimba says to him.
So yeah, he waits for Holden.
Yep. And then he waits for Holden. All right. So let's see.
Holden, chapter 23. Can I tell you what the first thing I have written down is?
Yeah.
It's him fantasizing about Naomi bringing him fruity drinks like on a beach or something, and blah blah blah. And then she says something about whatever they're doing, and he's like, "Ugh, she ruined it by talking." I'm just like, God, this is gross.
Was that Holden or Amos?
Holden. In Holden's mind, he was like, "Oh, she ruined it by talking."
Right.
Ugh. Go
Yeah, well,
away,
she did.
Holden.
She did. She's only there to gratify Holden. That's because he's a narcissist.
Yep. And I wrote, Holden really thinks highly of himself.
Is it on your end or my end that there's the sound effects?
Oh, it must be that thing that just went bling.
Yeah.
Yule's has like notifications that come up sometimes. I don't know how to.
Whatever.
I don't know how to.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
All right. So Holden and crew, we're back with them for now. They offload through the casinos, and Amos and Alex are like, we could make millions here because they did so well gambling on Tycho because those people are idiots.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty confident they can make a lot of money. Anyway, it's just small talk while they walk through the casino level and head to the tube station. I don't really know where they're going to that flop house.
They're going to a hotel. They're going to where they're told to get Leonard Polanski. He's supposedly at this hotel room, and they're headed there.
Right.
They get there.
Now,
looking at the screen.
Before they get there,
okay.
Alex or Amos is like, "Hey, we're being followed."
Oh, right, yeah.
And of course, it's Miller, guy with a hat. He's like he's totally conspicuous wearing this hat that nobody else wears hats, I guess.
Yeah.
And so he's like sticks out
or
like a
if they do, not like his.
Nothing like his. Because Amos even tells him later on that I noticed you right away because of your stupid hat.
Yeah.
All right. So they know they're being followed, but they're going to the place that they're going to anyway, and they don't bother to change tracks or anything. Amos, I think, says that the guy looks like a cop.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we haven't done anything wrong, so blah.
They're not used to, you say they don't change their tracks or anything, yeah, but they're not cops. They're not trackers.
Criminals.
They're not used to this sort of thing. Like,
they're ice haulers.
Right.
They're out of their
depth.
They're not
going to change their tracks.
They're completely out of their depth. I mean, Amos is the only one with any common sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, they walk into this flop house, and there's a lady behind the counter. She's ignoring them completely, and they're trying to figure out where this Lionel Polanski is. And then, bam, there's like, don't move. You're coming with us. It's like an ambush. Yeah. And somebody's gun goes off, and then it turns into a gunfight. And then, blam, 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 blam. Everybody's just shooting at everybody. And
then at the end of that, Miller's still standing. He's helped them by killing a person or two.
From getting flanked. He kills a couple people, and so I have
Holden and Miller meet.
Yes, they do meet finally. I have written down that this was the first exciting moment in a Holden chapter.
That's true. It's like the first real action, though. The getting off the Mars ship was action.
But it was it was. But I made a note of that moment as well because I was confused the whole time. I had no idea what was going on, where they were, what the situation was, what it looked like. None of that made any sense. It was just like this kind of haphazard, thrown together, it's supposed to be an exciting scene, and it was not.
Yeah, they went from point A to point B. Exciting things, I guess, happened. People got injured and died, and then they got there. But it wasn't.
It was a mess. That scene was a mess.
Yeah.
This one was a lot better. So I have to assume he had a lot of help with it. Because there's no way Ty Frank wrote this by himself, right? I'm sorry, Ty, but I don't think you're very good.
Maybe he was having a good day.
Well, maybe he's getting his bearings now after having written 20 chapters or something.
Maybe.
Miller's analysis of the Rocinante crew occurs. He's like kind of looking them over from a cop's perspective, from a detective's perspective. And then they go and they find Julie in the hole. Changes.
Miller clocks Naomi as the observant one, or I guess the smartest one, or the most observant one in his chapter.
Definitely is, yes.
And then in the next chapter, we get a moment of her being observant to Holden about how he knew Julie. And I wish those moments were switched, because we get told like by Miller that Naomi's this observant thing, and then the first time we see her, maybe not the first time, but really like contributing to the situation, we've already been told that she should be able to do this, and then she proves to us that she can.
That's a good point.
I didn't like that. And then there's something else I don't like about that too. But
you mean how you're jumping ahead chapters? Yeah, that's good stuff.
It's just the very next chapter, but yeah.
Yeah.
They have their exchanges and they decide to go to the room together.
Yeah, they find her body in that hotel room, and she's gone through a lot of changes. She's got all that black stuff coming out of her, every orifice, and her ribs are punctured and all sorts of stuff. It's like coming all out of her.
Yeah.
So they take her data pad before they actually find her body and put it in a plastic. Yeah. Which is fortunate. Good thing that they put it in plastic before.
Yeah. Like Holden says something like, "Don't touch anything," and Miller's like, "Oh, it's the first smart thing I've heard him say."
There was the security and the thugs and all that stuff, and how like the alarm didn't go off, and which implies that the thugs are tied in with the security personnel, or are the personnel.
Right.
And it was a setup from the beginning, and they were trying to get Holden in a crew. And I don't know. When I think back on it, I'm like, why? How did they know that Holden was coming? Did they know that Holden was coming? Because it seems to be the consensus is they thought that it was a setup.
Because I don't think Fred Johnson told anybody.
No, they ended up with Mole. That's what it was. There was a mole on Tycho Station that told them. I forgot about that. Oh, right. And Miller doxed Holden to Simatimba. Did you notice that? He was like, that guy, right, that short little earther dude, that's Holden. He's the one that started the war. And Sima's like, what? That better watch out.
Yeah.
Miller's able to talk them out of trouble. It's like kind of that brotherhood, that everybody talks about cops having. And Holden's like, how did we just get out of there without being arrested? And all this nonsense. He's like, shut up and be appreciative of the fact that you're not under arrest right now, because that's the way it should have rolled out.
Yeah.
But whatever. They get to walk away scot-free, promising that they won't leave the station. And Holden's like, don't make promises for me, bro.
Yeah, this is where Naomi and Holden are talking, and Naomi tells Holden, like, gives him her lowdown on what she thinks about Miller, and she observes that he knew her, which means he knew Julie, and Holden's like, what? Huh?
Holden's a dumbass.
And she explains all this to him, and then Holden immediately goes to Miller and confronts him about knowing Julie, and Miller asks why, and Holden says, oh, you knew Julie's name. That's how I know. Like, gives no credit to Naomi or anything like that. Like, it just felt cringy.
Well, it is a Holden chapter, so there's going to be some cringe in it, probably.
Ugh.
I mean, that's an understatement. Well, they compare notes in this chapter, and they instantly and miraculously crack the data pad that Julie left behind. They read it. It's like a time lapse of her going through the process of being captured, getting sick, escaping, getting a ship, moving it, getting there, and then they find, where they found her. And there's a warning in there. Like, if you read this, burn my body, it says, right? If you wanted to warn people, if they found your body, to burn it, would you put it on an encrypted data pad?
No.
Yeah, no, I'd leave it open. I would just leave it open with a big warning: burn my body, burn my body, burn
She
my.
seemed smart enough while all this was going on to have done something like that. Not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she had her first ding dong moment, but again, it's in a Holden chapter, so no surprise there. Everybody suspects that this is a bio weapon, and they're asking the question like, but why destroy the can't? Nobody can figure that out, but that's why Miller's here. He's on the case. Right. So they agree to team up. And oh yeah, her data pad also gave them a rock designation where there's an asteroid somewhere with coordinates. Essentially, if they have the number, they can get the coordinates, and it's in her data pad. So they're like, let's go there. Again, though, locked data pad.
Naomi can do anything, I guess.
Yeah, she's totally talented.
She can do anything.
I don't know how I mean, whatever. People crack that stuff, I suppose. But I mean, like the FBI can't crack Apple's security. So how is a low rung ice hauler technician going to crack a data pad?
Hopefully she ends up being some sort of crazy genius person that has been like hiding out, but that doesn't happen in this book.
Spoiler
or book 2.
Spoiler alert, Naomi's not special. All right. So chapter 26, Miller. All right. So they know that stage 3 has begun. I don't remember why they know that or how they know that, but like there's an explosion on Eros while they're kind of comparing notes. And then that voice telling them, like start moving towards the emergency shelters, please.
Yeah. A station evacuation due to radiation of some description. They're telling everyone to go to the radiation shelters.
Or the casino level, depending on where they're led by the security guys who are in mismatched armor and blah, blah, blah.
And this is where Miller starts noticing the people that are rounding up everybody are dressed in the riot gear.
He recognizes one of the guys.
Yeah, and recognizes somebody. So he's figured out where the riot gear's gone and where the Loca Griga / local thuggery has gone.
He tells Holden and crew, do not go where they're telling you to go. These guys are not on the up and up. They do not have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
So that's followed immediately by them dodging into like a service tunnel or something.
Right. This is a little funny moment. One funny Amos character moment in this chapter. They're talking about like getting that door open, and Holden's like, Amos, can you open that door? And he's like, can I break it? And Holden's like, yeah. It's like, all right. I thought that was funny. Or cute. Is this also when they decide?
Yeah, you got 3 hours.
So they decide, Holden and Miller decide they're gonna go check out what's going on, and this is when Holden, or does Naomi say it? One of them says to the other their famous line of "Don't be a hero," which equates to be a hero.
It's Holden that says it.
It's the opposite of what he means.
He's such a ding dong. Well, Miller and Holden, they go out to get some answers.
Yeah.
And leave everybody behind with the instructions after 3 hours, go back to the ship and get out of here.
Yeah.
Without us, if necessary.
Save the rest of the crew. Don't stay for us.
Yeah, don't be a hero.
Don't be a hero.
So
Naomi's means you better stay for us.
Yeah.
We will be coming back. That's what
Naomi's
that means.
Like, don't worry. I'm leaving without you.
Miller goes to make a phone call and the phones aren't working. And Miller notes, yeah, that's the first thing I do too. And Holden goes, huh? He like doesn't get it. And this is the whole flow of information difference between Holden and Miller. Like Miller can see what's going on, the suppression of information, everything that's happening, and Holden just doesn't seem to get it.
Well, they find a guard all by his lonesome or something, or maybe it's 2 guards guarding one of the radiation shelters.
They try to they
want to know what's inside.
Yeah, so they tell him to open the thing. Right before they open the door, Miller or Holden's like, no, don't do it. And then he steps in and the guard just drops dead.
Yeah.
And they start feeling weird and they're like, we're gassed.
And they're getting hella dosed, radiation dosage.
Yeah, they've been dosed. That's when their little radiation things go off, and
everybody that was in that room is lying on the floor.
Yeah, it's not
unconscious or dead.
Gas chambers.
So their radiation alarms are going off. I don't know how they figured it out. Maybe there was like the brown stuff was being sprayed on them or something. I don't remember.
That happens like in the next chapter when
No, it was before that because they're talking about the radiation feeding the superbug.
I think it was in
Julie's,
Julie's on the pad. I
yeah,
think it was in Julie's, something in Julie's notes
yep. It said to avoid
about
radiation,
light and radiation grip.
which light is a radiation.
Yeah.
So they're figuring it out. I guess obviously
Miller's figuring it out.
it's not Holden. It's
No,
definitely Miller.
no.
But Miller tells Holden, he tells him how to shoot people that are wearing riot gear. He instructs him like the side of the leg under this part right here. It's like that's how you kill them with the riot gear on, because they know now that it's gotten like very, very serious.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to a Miller chapter.
Yeah.
Miller goes on a killing spree. He kind of goes
Yeah.
off the rails. He starts killing people.
Yeah, and then he starts thinking about how he's getting this like pleasure out of it, but the
Yes.
pleasure is actually a pain,
No, I
like
don't
a
know about
pleasure
that.
pain thing, one of those things.
He's kind of taking his revenge out on them. And they do have a goal, and their goal is being thwarted by all of these thugs in riot gear. Like they're trying to get back now to the other people from Holden's crew. They're trying to get back upstream, essentially, and it's hard because there's a lot of guards in the way. So Miller's killing them as they go, as necessary. And I guess it's freaking Holden out because he's pretty casual about it.
By it. He's shocked by it.
So I want to know how would Holden have gotten back to his allies? Please let us go by. We have.
Well, no, I'm sorry. They would have gone off to the radiation chambers and then died inside of them if Miller wasn't there. That's what would have happened.
You're 100%. You're completely correct.
They weren't going to make it doing what they were doing. Like they wanted to get to their ship. Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
They finally get back to their designated meeting spot 5 minutes after the time has elapsed. They're like 5 minutes late getting back to where Naomi and Alex and Amos are. And guess what? There's nobody there because Naomi did what she said she was going to do. And Holden's all butthurt about it. I can't believe she left me. You told her to, dumbass.
Yeah.
You told her to, and she did. Maybe she left a little early, but that's okay. I can forgive her that. We know from this section of this chapter or whatever that Protogen, before they left, they moved a whole bunch of equipment on board. We don't really know what kind of equipment. I think it's like monitoring equipment and cameras and communications arrays and etc. And then we kind of get an explanation for why Miller needs to find Julie. It's got something to do with like she has become a symbol to him. Like she's like the good part of him, of all that's left of Miller that's been worn away by the things that he's seen and the things that he's done. She represents the last good parts of it. So there's rioting on the station because the people that are being contained down in the casinos are being held at gunpoint, and they kind of figure it out, that they just want to escape, and they keep trying to, and they keep getting shot, and yet people keep trying and getting shot. It's kind of ridiculous. And then Holden sees like a 13-year-old kid or something get shot by one of these thugs, and he like charges the guy with a gun out and like bang, 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 shoots him 3 times, but he hits the chest armor. Yeah. Because he didn't listen to Miller. Yeah. And he reacted on emotion, and he went after this guy, and he was about to get killed. And Miller had to step in and kill the guy.
Yeah, before this, he was thinking about how like he would never die. Like the universe didn't make sense without him in it.
Narcissist.
But now it's all seeming real because of the radiation poisoning, and like their bodies are deteriorating as all.
That's a good point. They are starting to feel the deterioration.
So I don't know if that's quite a character moment for him of introspection. It's like a really small moment of introspection for him that doesn't really hold once they get better.
Well, it's like a lesson not learned, right?
Lesson not learned. And then he goes all crazy over the dead kid. And I think it's that he's he saw everybody on the Canterbury die, but he didn't see it. Like all the death he's experienced has been from far away, except for Shed, but nobody seemed to care about Shed at all.
Well, why would we?
Well, why wouldn't they?
I don't know. I mean,
is my question. I know why we don't.
Didn't they? No, they had their little cry on the ship. Yeah. They had the whiskey out or whatever, and they cried about Shed and all the lost friends. And Shed was there for that, actually.
I was going to say, wasn't that Shed was sad about the can? Like, I don't think they ever really processed.
It's been go since then until they got to Tycho. And then they got to Tycho and
moved on.
Yeah, buried shed at sea, I guess.
Yeah.
He went down with that big ship, the Donager or whatever it was.
Yeah. But Holden's never seen death up close. It's the first time he's seen death in his face. Like, death
Yeah,
seems real to him.
pretty brutal.
He's been untouchable in his mind up to this point.
Such a little bitch. All right. So the riots continue. Miller and Holden are in the casino level because I guess that's just where, water flows downhill, and that's where they ended up.
Hmm.
And they're dying slowly of radiation poisoning. And Miller he's coming to terms with death. Like embracing this thing he refers to as the death self, and like,
Yeah, he has two. He's like of two minds. Like
right.
one's at peace, kind of a nihilistic peace, and the other one's kind of still driving him to get
Right.
his final answers.
Right. And some of those questions that remain are like, if protogen's involved, why, how,
Why?
etc.
Yeah.
Well, this is also where the cop in Miller starts to put everything together. And he starts to think that maybe Eros is a test tube, and all that observation equipment that Protogen brought in is to observe what's going on.
Right.
And it's around that time that the tube opens up. The tube is their subway system or whatever. And a bunch of
Yes.
zombies stumble out and start vomiting on people.
Yeah, brown goo.
And these are the people who got gassed and then irradiated in the radiation shelters. Yeah. And Miller realizes that the guards didn't know that they weren't going to live through this.
Right, they're not in on it.
The thug guards in the riot gear, they were a temporary solution. They're not leaving the station, just like these civilians aren't.
Yeah. Sorry.
So
guys.
they're using the chaos to their advantage.
I think what happens is Miller makes note of maybe a handful of people that do know what's going on.
The real guards.
The real guards, yeah, and kind of follow what they're doing or where they're going. I believe.
Yeah, the real guards were the ones that were like guarding the hallway that led out to like the docks and stuff.
Yeah.
And he notices that they're not freaking out. They knew this was coming, whereas the other guards had no idea what was coming. He locks onto them, and then as they start to retreat down the hallway, he pulls Holden along and they follow.
Yes.
And nobody else they're all occupied with the zombies.
Yeah, they don't know what's going on.
So they just pull away from everybody else and follow these professional soldiers. All right, so chapter 31, they're following the actual the Protogen mercenaries down into like the warehouse spaces and like further outside, further into the outer levels or whatever. Oh yeah, and then the group, more people meet up with that group, and then they end up splitting into two factions, probably Protogen and then thugs. And then they end up shooting at each other in point blank range, killing a whole bunch of people, and then retreating down these two hallways.
But while that's going on, Miller and Holden are discussing about what they could be talking about. Like, what do you think they're talking about? Or like Miller asks. And Holden says, hey, can we have a ride too? No, you guys need to stay here and keep an eye on things, which we promise will be totally safe and absolutely not involve you turning into vomit zombies. The one and only time anything like this happens in this book, it's ridiculous.
It's a Holden chapter.
Ridiculous.
Okay,
that's
so
the character moment that he gives to Holden. Ugh.
No. That was Miller saying that.
No. Miller said, want to guess what the argument is about? And then Holden responds with that little jokey, quippy line.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I had it backwards. Nevertheless, this is a Holden chapter.
Yes.
So it's unsurprising.
Yes.
Okay, so when they had the Miller chapter right after they met up, right after the gunfight, that was the first time any of the Rocinante crew were written in a way that I was like, oh, that's a sensible conversation.
Right, we forgot to talk about that. Yeah, like Amos is the big guy, but Miller can see that, he's the only one with training. Naomi's the observant one. Yeah. Alex is basically useless, which he clocks correctly right away.
The thing that really impressed me in that scene was that he was giving them character by their actions, not just their words.
Exactly. Which was
And
why
one
I
of
hated that the Naomi observation came before her
yeah,
actually doing the thing.
right. So like Amos was standing behind Naomi or Holden, I don't know who, but he was like standing there like a guard,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the things that he said and did like totally made sense, which we don't see any of that in Holden chapters ever.
We
It's
really
pretty
don't.
uncommon if it
No.
ever happens.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm gonna try not to complain about that stuff anymore, but it's really hard when you read 600 pages of a book and it's a pain, you know. Okay, so there's that dumb dialogue that you're talking about,
They stumble onto the ship, and
basically
now,
dying because they've now been shot when they were trying to cross that
right?
gauntlet, and they're dying of radiation poisoning.
Yeah, they're pretty messed up.
Yeah.
And they wake up on the ship. We're in Miller's chapter, and he's awake, but Naomi and Holden are talking, and he's eavesdropping on the conversation.
Well, I mean,
I
sorry he's
would.
there.
I'm not saying
right?
anything's wrong with it. I'm just saying that's what's happening. And then we get the whole dialogue with Naomi and Holden.
I need you to know I really love you. I can't live without you.
I was thinking about you when I was dying. And then she's like, hold on, wait a second. Like, hold on. Just hold on a second. Let me tell you about when I fell in love with you. Where did that come from? She's in love with him? For what reason? And then to top it all off, she fell in love with him way before he even noticed she existed, which makes the whole thing even worse in my mind.
Yeah. And
Gross.
now because she's the only woman on the ship, now he's paying attention to her.
Exactly.
But that rings true. That rings true.
100% true. Because
Yeah.
she explains the whole thing. He never gave her two thoughts, and wasn't into belters.
Yeah.
Now that there's nothing left,
Notice
he doesn't care.
this is a Miller chapter.
Yes, this is a Miller chapter.
So we're getting the best possible character development we could, and it's still disgusting.
Yes, because that's what he has to work with, right? But he must but why we?
Oh, hey, he agreed to write this book. Okay, he's not innocent.
Well, no, like just Naomi being in love with him, and when he saw how nicely he treated a girl who was obsessed with him, but he didn't like her, but he treated her with respect, and that's when she fell in love with him.
Yeah.
Blech.
Exactly.
Gross.
Miller, how far you've fallen.
Man.
But yeah, he can't help it. He coughs and he alerts them that he's awake.
Yeah. Oof,
and we find out that Eros is in quarantine lockdown. And then Miller kind of tries to talk Holden through killing somebody. Like, he's trying to be a senior officer, as it were, or whatever.
Right.
And
this is when Holden, I think, also talks about an Holden character in a Miller chapter. The whole he's seen people die from far away but never up close. I believe.
Well, he's even pulled the trigger, but it was always little blips on a screen.
Yeah, they talk about that here. This is a whole Miller chapter full of Holden character development.
Because Holden's not doing it.
No, he can't. He's not
Miller
retrospective. Inwardly retrospective.
Yeah.
Wait, is that the right word? Retrospective?
Introspective.
Introspective. He's not very introspective.
How could you be if you're actually a fool?
Yeah.
You better not be introspective.
And that conceited too.
Because otherwise you've got no excuse. Terrible. Like, we're supposed to think this guy is awesome.
Naomi even said, I believe she even says in her speech, or calls out, like, he, even being nice to her, like, he knows what he's doing. She knows what his MO is, but yet she still digs
it's easier for other people usually to see. He's not an introspective guy, so she's real observant, so probably she's able to see his behavior for what it is much easier than he can see his own behavior for what it is. He probably thinks he's just being a nice guy and he's genuinely interested in these people.
Right. Even though
she's pointing out the truth and he's like, what? That's not, is that me?
Huh?
Yeah, that's you, dumbass.
Yeah.
Well, the war is rolling on. and nobody knows what's going on with Eros. Absolutely nobody. It's not in the feeds, nothing. But they figure out the drive signatures on the box were the okay. So you remember when Lieutenant Kelly was trying to smuggle that box off, and
Yeah.
for whatever reason he decided to sacrifice himself and all of his Marines to get that box off.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Gaping wound in this plot. Well, they finally put it together, and for whatever reason, Fred's people couldn't figure out that the whole point of that box was to record the drive signatures of the ship that attacked the Martian warship.
Right. It's to show who did it. And Naomi, once again, she can do anything, figures it out seemingly quickly. Makes no sense that most of the engineers and the smartest people on Tycho couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, no kidding.
Ridiculous,
No,
actually.
it's actually laughable. Like
It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense at all. It's a when I said gaping wound, I wasn't kidding. Like it's a terrible, terrible plot device.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's you're gonna die from that one if you don't get it stitched up, right? And yet they're book 9. I don't know. They just keep going.
I don't know.
God, I hope they get better. Well, anyway, they figure out what that stuff's about, and I think that they kind of didn't Miller help her figure out how that worked. Like, why wouldn't you tell everybody? Because obviously Holden doesn't know the answer to that question. You don't tell everybody because you want independent corroboration of your theory. You give them the evidence. This is what we've collected. What do you see? And then you don't tell them.
This is where the Miller and Holden views of the world clash again. Like Holden wants to immediately send this information out, and
he
Miller's
does send it out.
What are you doing? Like, why do you want to get Earth involved in this? Like, why do you want to make this worse?
He does send it out.
And he does, but this, like, right before he does it, they have this little argument, or like right after he did it, whatever.
Well, fortunately for everybody, Miller included, there are some repercussions to sending this information out. Anyway, they arrive at the asteroid where Julie left her ship.
Mm-hmm.
Those coordinates that she left on her data pad. They get there, and there's a stealth ship tied to that rock. Dun, dun, dun.
Pause for a second.
Yeah.
We've got a lot left.
Yep, we're working through it, though. We're on chapter 34.
Do you mind if I grab a little bit more coffee?
Go ahead. I think this is a pretty good stopping point for this episode. We've gotten just over an hour in, and we have a long way to go, in honesty. Thanks for sticking around. I expect that if you are sticking around, it's because you feel similarly about this book. Or perhaps you think Gab and Blab are ding-dongs and you just have to know what other dumb things they're going to say. That's understandable. We don't really mind, because we know we're ding-dongs. Thanks for joining us for this episode, number 3, probably of 5. This is Gab signing off while Blab's getting coffee. If you like what we're doing, please follow the protocols typical of social media to let us know, to let your friends know, whatever. And we'll see you in the next chapter, section, episode. Thanks for listening and keep reading.